Thank you, Molly. Can technology change education? I like you guys already. So this is an image from the late 60s of a CDC plateau. And for some of you that may recognize that, it's one of the first computer-assisted learning systems that ran on a mainframe, and it was delivering about 20 lessons on a mainframe. So big idea, but perhaps not so big impact. So certainly, technology has changed tremendously in the last 50-plus years. And there have been many initiatives that have tried to use technology to change education, some very visible, like the one laptop per child, but most would believe that technology has failed to meet some of the expectations. I firmly believe that technology can transform learning. I really believe it can. I do know that there are a few myths and a few barriers about what it might take to change education. My talk is about real-life stories where technology has advanced education. My talk is about 3 inspiring stories and 3 lessons where amazing people with big dreams have pioneered change, and also about 3 lessons that we can take from these stories and apply them in our own backyards and in our communities. But first, I want to show you something. So take a piece of paper, you might have one, and just draw 2 dots. I did this before backstage, but you can do it now. And we've learned in geometry that the shortest distance between 2 dots is a straight line. Now, of course, you know I have a different answer here, right? So what you can do is when you bend the rules, you bend the piece of paper, the dots are now actually touching each other, and the shortest distance between these 2 dots is when you touch them together, right? So that's the metaphor for my stories. When you change the thinking, you can change the rules. We can change the solution. Now, maybe you were expecting a magic sleight of hand, so I didn't get the applause a magician might, but I call this the magic of thinking, right? So I think it's an amazing way to say, when we change our thinking, we can actually change the solution. So one of the popular myths is that big dreams need big budgets. 50 years ago, the big dream was, let's put a man on the moon, and certainly we spent a lot of money getting a man on the moon. And that sort of conditions our thinking about big dreams need big budgets. We certainly see that in the media every day. But in the same context of the space program, here's the story of Apollo 13, where we had 3 astronauts, Jim Lowell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Heisey, on another mission to the moon, but an equipment malfunction created a crisis, and came the message from the ship, Houston, we have a problem. Now, all the money in the world and all the resources in the world could not reach out to these 3 men in space. The situation that was created was, work with what you have, and necessity created innovation. And these 3 men were able to return safely back to Earth. And there's a common analogy there. To many, the solution around education could be more spending. And I'm here to share with you a story that says it's not about increased spending. And I've looked at quite a few amounts of data, a lot of surveys, and the one I grabbed here for you is a survey that talks about education spending in K through 12 on a per-student basis. And this survey includes educational spending from about 25-plus countries. And somewhere at the top, we have the United States, where we spend about $10,000 or more per student per year. And at the bottom of the chart, and I know it's an eye chart, it's not easy to see, is Turkey, the country of Turkey. And they spend just over about $1,000 a year per student per year. And for the people that say, well, the dollars are different, well, it's actually also represented as a percentage of GDP, right? So we're trying to make sure that purchasing power and currencies don't really necessarily are changing what the data might be. So the myth is, spending is the answer. And we all know, and I'm not here to suggest that we should not spend more, but the story I'd like to sort of share with you is the story that comes from Turkey. And it's an amazing story. So let's play the video, please. So I think this Firefly project, the Mobile Learning Unit project in Turkey, actually teaches a valuable lesson and a great insight. And that is, technology can change how we do school. So more than 1.6 million children that are getting access to learning that didn't have access to learning before. And that's being transformed because of technology. So what it teaches me is you can actually dream big and make a big impact even when you don't have a lot of money. And I think that's the lesson away from here. So you can achieve a lot with small amounts of money if you think carefully about how to spend it. The second myth I want to talk about is the myth that perhaps we already have technology in our schools. We have computers in our schools. We don't have a problem. We have some computers in a classroom. We may have some computers in computer labs. Now, in my own backyard in Silicon Valley, I see that's not the case. I see the traditional classroom. I see the four walls of a classroom. I see the teacher at the head of the class, the stage at the stage, and instructions being delivered in a very standard way to students. So I believe that even in today's world, we're pretty much delivering learning just like we did when we didn't have computers, because nothing really much has changed. And what's needed is we have to tear down the walls. We have to tear down the walls of the classroom. And we can make that possible with technology, where we can use blended learning to deliver a mix of different types of learning to kids. And I have this story from this small school district in Moraga, California. There's 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school. And Moraga School District worked with their budget. They didn't have a lot of it. They worked with their budget. And they looked for low-cost computing technologies. And they were able to get them deployed so you could create a one-to-one learning environment. In that learning environment, both teachers and students work together. And in my opinion, blended learning is where you get the best of both teachers and technology. And just look at these images. We've got children doing customized learning. They can actually learn what they want to learn. They can learn at their own pace. You can see much better collaboration between kids. You can also see a much higher engagement. And certainly, I think kids today are much more tuned into using technology. So by using technology, you can transform the learning in the classroom, especially when you go for one-to-one. Now, teachers, some of them feel that technology may depersonalize the learning experience. But what we have found is actually almost the opposite, that it immensely personalizes the teaching experience, and a teacher can go from being the sage at the stage to a guide by the side. Right? You can actually transform the role of the teacher to become a coach, working closely with students as they need help. They can really reconnect with their main purpose of being learning masters and not necessarily worry about being content masters. So technology can really change how we do school as we start to integrate technology into the school, into the classroom, not just in a supplementary lab that kids might see maybe 30 minutes a week or 30 minutes a day. And so the second lesson that I have learned is technology can change how we do school. And one of the ways you can do that is if you integrate technology into the classroom, not just as a supplementary thing. And when you focus on the student, not necessarily just on the teachers, when you focus on the students and you look at student-centric learning, make more options available, the students are more engaged and the teacher's role is transformed, and it turns out to be actually better for both. So you can really unlock the power of student-centric learning with technology. The third myth I want to talk about is, people may believe, if only I had this great widget, this great technology, then it would solve everything. And that usually ends up leading to this mistake, which I call the hunger for tech candy, right? We all like candy, and we see this great candy, and maybe a few years ago it was netbooks, then it was iMacs, then it was maybe some kind of, Ultrabook or a laptop or iPads, and, clearly, these are great technologies, right? They actually serve a great purpose, but they turn out to be sometimes either very expensive or possibly hard to scale. And that's what I want us to think about. It's not that I'm suggesting we should not have experimentation, we should not have innovation. I think what I'm suggesting is that we've got to think about how we can put the tech candy on a diet, but really focus on making this available to many rather than a few. So what are the things that will matter when I take a look at some kind of technology that can actually enable broad access? So my third story to you is about the Richmond City School District in Virginia. This is a school district that has 55 sites and about 25,000 students. 33% of the students in this school district are living below the poverty level. Right? A lot of the spending that the school may get is actually channeled to help provide, nutritional meals to the kids. So there's not a lot of money left over for other things. It also turns out that most of the kids don't have access to computers or technology at home. So two people at this school district, Kavanza Gardner and Cassandra Harris, they work in IT, and they really felt that the current situation was not tenable. They had 1 or 2 computer labs and maybe a few computers in the classroom. They really wanted to get more computing in front of kids so they would have more access, but they could not afford to buy PCs. So they looked at some low-cost computing technologies, and there are quite a few different options out there, and they decided to make them more available, more pervasive. So they were able to more than double the number of computer labs. They were actually able to bring computing and technology into the classroom and start to make a difference. And what happened is, as a result, kids now had more access to get different kinds of learning available to them. They had more ability to learn together with their peers, with their other classmates. Teachers were more integrated into that environment, and they were able to help more. It was also possible for kids to learn how to better, run through an assessment. So a variety of changes led to just an overall better learning environment, but also creating an environment of better achievement. And that was made possible because Cassandra and Kavanza thought about the third key lesson, which is how do we deliver this technology to and provide more access to many rather than a few. So those are the 3 lessons that I would like to share with you. When I think about technology in the classroom and technology in education, I see a much broader purpose, a purpose of universal connectivity. Let me explain what I mean by that, and I'll do that with an analogy. In 1825, Louis Braille devised the Braille system. Before 1825, the blind and the visually impaired did not have access to the vast amounts of books and written knowledge. After this was devised, suddenly the Braille system opened up a whole world of content and information available so blind and visually impaired people could actually learn by themselves and be free. And I see technology can play, in a similar way, a very similar role by making connectivity possible and make that connectivity possible to all these growing open learning resources that are out there in the world today and that are growing by the day. And this is which will allow kids to basically learn anytime, anywhere, whether they may be a kid in Bend, Oregon, or a kid in Hong Kong, or a kid in London. So, 3 stories, 3 lessons. So what do? I believe that each one of you can make a big difference. The question is how. At N Computing, we are creating a community website. This website has more than 30 stories. We are working with more than 30,000 technology-enabled schools around the world. And what we want you to do, each one of you, is to come and learn, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're an administrator. We want you to come and learn. Then we want you to come and share what you have learned. And what might have been learned by a teacher, let's say in Zambia, could be applied in a school district somewhere else in the US or somewhere else around the world. So what's working, what's not working, that can be shared, and the community will actually thrive on that. And then finally, as we learn and as we share, we can now bring the change back into our communities and ultimately do what we all want to do, which is make learning better for our children. Thank you.